Headline: 13 UW Madison visas terminated by U.S. government. Chancellor Mnuchin says it's not tied to quote unquote protest activity. This broke late yesterday afternoon. It's still really a fluid story. What we know so far from reporting is there were a total of 13 individuals, six who are current UW Madison international students, and seven alumni who are still here on what's called visa employment extensions, which were notified yesterday without notice that their visas had been, quote, immediately terminated and they were to leave the country with no grace period. Pat, this is something I know a little bit about, having been involved in immigration, but also student visas. But before we get into my take, I want your take on this breaking story.
Well, keep in mind as well that this is a national story. It started off as, a local story out of Madison, and then you'd see another local report somewhere else in the country. And finally, folks kind of stitched it all together. And at last report that I saw, and it may be more than this by now, but we're talking at least 150 students at campuses around the country that have had their visas terminated immediately. They have to leave the country immediately, not at the end of their semester, not at the end of the school year, not at the end of any special project they might be working on for their, to become a master's or anything like that. They have to leave immediately. None of them are known to be terrorists. None of them are known to be members of MS-13. So you are left with, and there's nobody that can tell me otherwise, you are left with a blend of racism and xenophobia as the only explanation why you would kick out immediately people who are trying to get an education, better themselves, take the experience of being in what used to be the greatest nation on earth and take it back to their home countries. And instead, we are sinking lower into the abyss that we have people in charge so jingoistic that they say, you're whatever kind of foreigner you are, get out of our country. What the hell were these people thinking in saying, yep, let's cancel all these student visas? I honestly don't know.
It would appear on the face of it so far that everything you said is true, and just add on that, and this has been said by others, that cruelty is part of the point here. I've known a lot of folks during my time at UW Richland, at UW Platteville, and you know this, Pat, whether it's in Eau Claire, maybe even to a higher degree, Rice Lake, these two-year colleges, where there are fewer minority folks that live in those cities in Wisconsin. These international programs aren't just a great opportunity for folks from other countries to come and get a good education in the UW system and enhance our communities. It's a great chance for us, that in Wisconsin, who aren't particularly in small towns, don't have the opportunity to get to know someone on a personal level from another country, let alone another race, to grow within ourselves. And it just seems cruel what they are doing, what the Trump administration is doing here.
I would invoke my own wife Sherry, who went to a very small high school in Manitowoc County, and yet that tiny high school had a foreign exchange student in there from Spain who lived with Sherry's family. He got to learn how a dairy farm operated, and years later, we visited Spain to see the small business that the family business that he took over. It was just a wonderful, literal exchange of cultures and learning from one another, as everybody in that small Manitowoc County community did. And to say that this is not something we want anymore in this country is indicative of, in my mind, it's like testing the ice. Is the ice thick enough yet to go out on this? But because first it was gang members, and then it was, mistakenly rounding up people who, weren't in a gang, but we didn't like their tattoos. And now we're doing students here on visas. At some point, where's the line? All right. In Wisconsin last week, we learned where's the line on Supreme Court. What can a billionaire do? Well, apparently when you get to like $20 million, some people get turned off by that. They're doing the same thing with this. Where's the line? If people don't get outraged about this, and sadly, most people won't get outraged by this, but what is the next step? What is the next step? And Todd, when is the point where I'm looking at this camera right now and I see two guys in badges showing up behind you and saying, we've been told that you are being subversive and you are done. And, spare me. People out there in the listening audience going, oh, there he goes. He's going off there. Really? Where's the line at this point? Where is the line?
I couldn't agree more. And I put this out on a couple of my social platforms last night, that between what we're seeing here in Madison, and like your point, well, it's someplace else. No, now this is, well, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know of any place where the Trump ICE entourage has quote unquote disappeared. In other words, just took someone off the street. I don't know of any, I'm not aware of that in Wisconsin proper yet. I know at University of Minnesota, it happened last week. But here in Wisconsin now, it's canceling of legitimate, legal international student visas. And I'm trying, this is from this Supreme Court decision late yesterday afternoon, which was kind of a complex and mixed bag, essentially telling the Trump administration, look, you have to give people due process before you can deport them into El Salvador, into this gulag type of dog kennel prison for humans. But we're going to allow you to continue to do it for now because you came to us in Washington, D.C. and not in Texas. Basically, you didn't follow the technical rules, and so you can still do it. But moving forward, please be more careful. Do I have that kind of about right, Pat?
Yeah, you basically do. And that's what happened when, again, with Donald Trump winning in 2016, without winning a majority of the popular vote, but winning the Electoral College, able to come in, appoint those 3 more Supreme Court justices. Don't forget the ones that were stolen, earlier from President Obama, and politicize the court to the point where something that would be much like the presidential immunity thing, on its face, that Supreme Court should have immediately said, no, you do not have immunity. Instead, they dawdled for weeks to finally come up and say, well, if, like Nixon said, if the president, does it, it's not a crime. And we're seeing that play out in scenario after scenario, like this one here, and like the one about pausing, another lower court order to rehire 16,000 federal probationary workers. Again, the U.S. Supreme Court is enabling this authoritarian time and time again already.
I want to go back to your point, Pat, earlier, that if you think this is just, that's too bad to be a brown person today. Think again. This is from Justice Sotomayor's dissent last night, yesterday afternoon, on the Supreme Court's decision giving Trump the green light to keep disappearing people. This is a quote from Justice Sotomayor. Quote, "The implication of the government's position is that not only non-citizens, but also United States citizens could be taken off the streets, forced onto planes, and confined to foreign prisons with no opportunity for redress if judicial review is denied unlawfully before removal. History is no stranger to such lawless regimes, but this nation's system of laws is designed to prevent, not enable, their rise." Absolutely chilling from Justice Sotomayor.